Our guest today is Chadwick Moore. He's the former editor-at-large for Out Magazine and The Advocate. He's a gay atheist journalist, and his career has taken him to the queer underbelly of Putin's Russia, to the streets of Queens, New York City, where trans undocumented sex workers struggle for survival, and to Orlando, hours after the jihadist massacre at the Pulse nightclub. Freethinkers of PSU is a nonpartisan organization, but we found it relevant to invite Chadwick after he came out as a conservative earlier this year. Many in our group come from closed religious backgrounds, myself included, and surprisingly, we recognize some parallels between our own experiences of exiting religion and what Chadwick has gone through. Speaking for myself, I've observed political ideologues and activists acting similarly to religious fundamentalists, speaking bluntly. In the name of so-called social justice or anti-fascism, dissidents face ritualistic humiliation, excommunication, and even physical violence, all for questioning dogma. It is in this context that we as a student group invited Chadwick Moore. Please welcome him.
Assalamu alaikum. That's how they say hello in France. I recently learned. Ooh. Thank you, Andy, very much for that introduction. And I've got so many microphones on right now. Okay, are we all good? And to Freethinkers of Portland State for inviting me and for existing. This is such an important type of student group to have on campuses today, which champion free inquiry and disobedient voices on the college campus. And it's great to see all of you here. I didn't know if anyone was going to be here. But you know what, Portland? This is my first time in Portland. It's my first time in the Pacific Northwest. Thank you. It's beautiful. It's a very, very beautiful place. I hear they're extending the subway from Brooklyn to stop here, so maybe I can come more frequently. But I flew all the way across the country to be here today. I'm making no money doing this, all right? It's because I truly love free speech and free ideas, and I like engaging with college students. And every flyer promoting this event has been torn down. I mean, I'm a moderate, if you really get to know me. This is the kind of reception I'm getting. I've been up since 3 in the morning, New York time, okay, to get here. And every flyer has been torn down. I just saw that somebody had taped over flyers saying something like, oh, it's like these people. I actually appreciate you guys being here. I really, really do. I am trash. I'm from rural Tennessee. I'm definitely white trash. But alt-right, I don't know what that means. Destroy local fascist. I mean, we're going to get into all this stuff, right? And the white girl holding Black Lives Matter. And but I do love you guys. I appreciate you. Thank you for being peaceful and respectful. I love free speech. Somebody taped over the posters today saying like fascist sympathizer or something. This man is a fascist sympathizer or something like that. Which is really funny because they probably Googled me and saw all the work I've done for the gay community, my journalism, my reporting, and they're like, well, what do we call him? We can't call him a fascist. He's done a lot more than we have for the gay community. So how about fascist sympathizer? Great, perfect, done, sold. And by the way, how dare you assume my gender? Also here at Portland State, I was informed by some of my beautiful little moles here on campus that the Queer Resource Center refused to put up flyers promoting the event. Now, I'm not an egomaniac. I didn't know that they were putting flyers up. If 2 people had showed up, I would have been thrilled, and I was kind of looking for an excuse to visit the Pacific Northwest anyway. But it's interesting that a place calling itself the Queer Resource Center appeared to not have a single flyer relating to gay people. The pictures I saw on their bulletin board were all about illegal immigrant rights and raising the minimum wage and feminist dance theory or God knows what. And here I am, a public gay person who was working for the 2 largest gay magazines in the world as their top investigative journalist, and they can't put that up there because they don't like my politics. Maybe the Queer Resource Center ought to rebrand itself as something less misleading. The Ministry of Propaganda, the I'm With Her Memorial Museum and Gift Shop, Berkamart. I've also heard Portland, and I'm staying all weekend. I really want to see this place. But I have been following news. I saw that tomorrow's 82nd Avenue of Roses parade was canceled due to threats of terrorism from this new paramilitary wing of the Democratic Party that is calling itself Antifa. Now, if you don't know American history, because you're in college, you wouldn't. The Democratic Party is no stranger to establishing paramilitary operations, most notably in 1865 when Republicans took their slaves away and they established the Ku Klux Klan. So this is nothing new. Antifa, whoever this group is, whoever's funding them, has shut down this parade tomorrow, saying that 200 or more of their members are going to rush into the parade and drag out and push, this is a quote, drag out and push those people out who we will not give 1 inch, and we will not give 1 inch to groups who espouse hatred. What they were referring to was the local county Republicans Club wanted to march in this nice little parade that you have here in town. God forbid. Lovely human beings. Small government, fiscally responsive people want to march, and we're going to drag them out. Perfect. So one last thank you. Thank you again for all of you for coming out. But since today we're going to be talking about orthodoxy and free speech, we owe a big, huge thank you to the students and faculty of UC Berkeley, who once again have used violence and intimidation to shut down speech on campus. They can't stop themselves. This happened this week when Ann Coulter was not allowed to speak, and the administration there has proven itself to live in cowering fear of the savagery and bloodthirsty actions of a small member of its student body. Even Bernie Sanders, Bill Maher, and Elizabeth Warren publicly spoke out and said that Anne should be allowed to speak. That is the Father, the Son, and the Holy Indian of liberalism. They said, let her talk, and it still couldn't happen. So the reason why I'm thanking them is this was a huge win in the court of public opinion for the new free speech movement. And the new free speech movement is a right-wing endeavor. Conservatism, whether they want to hear it or not on the left, is the new counterculture. Because the left is the dominant force in American society. They control the media, they control Hollywood, they control academia, and they control the establishment politics. So, our freedoms, these things that we love so much, that I love so much, these constitutional rights, are not innate. They are continually earned. And with each generation comes a small, valiant, and vigilant group of individuals who defend our freedoms and our constitutional rights. As Ronald Reagan said, and a year ago I never thought I'd be quoting Ronald Reagan, freedom is only 1 generation away from barbarism. So briefly, if you know nothing about me, as Andy said in his introduction, I was a lifelong liberal, what Andrew Breitbart called a default liberal. He had the same experience, where I spent my life sleepwalking on the left. A lot of that had to do with simply being gay. If anyone had, and you're just sort of told the other side is so against you, you have no choice. And in college, I was a socialist. I was marching against the Iraq War. By the way, to you lovely people in the back, we were calling George Bush a Nazi. All right, so this is nothing new. It turns out he wasn't a Nazi. We were having same signs like this. So I get you. I've been there. I was you. My hair was that color also. And I spent my whole life sort of on the left. All my friends, everyone who knew me could tell I was very right-leaning in my views. I consider myself a classical liberal, a constitutional conservative. And I love John Stuart Mill, and I love thinkers like this, these classically liberal voices. But all that came to a head last year in the election cycle when I started really looking at the Democrat talking points. And I'm not going to get into too much detail because we have a lot to discuss tonight. But it culminated into me writing or being profiled in the New York Post about coming out as a conservative, essentially having had enough. When that happened, I lost 90% of my friends. I lost my job. I was fired for being conservative. What else happened? Lots of things happened. But I'm not a victim. I don't feel like I'm a victim. What I was beginning to experience was true liberation, which is how I feel now. And I've not been this happy in years. So I'm going to touch back on that towards the end. But right now I want to, my lovely little moles here at Portland State were so kind to share with me some literature that's distributed to students here. I have in my possession a document of sorts that is taught to students here at Portland State as part of a mandatory course for certain majors that have nothing to do with these issues. This document is called Power and Privilege Definitions. This is a copy of it. And it's a bit of Marxist theory presented as fact with no resources, no arguments, no backing it up. And this document defines terms like oppression, privilege, targets of oppression, agents of oppression. We all know who that is. Race, racism, ally, and my favorite, internalized oppression. All right, so I want to look at this since we're talking about orthodoxy on campus. I'm going to look at the definition of oppression in this of privilege in this document. So this says that this is telling students at Portland State, and obviously this is not just Portland State. This is like any handbook in any college in America now. It says privilege. Privilege operates on a personal, interpersonal, cultural, and institutional levels and gives advantages, favors, benefits to members of dominant groups at the expense of members of target groups. In the United States, obviously the world's most oppressed nation, privilege is granted to people who have membership in one or more of these social identity groups. And then it lists them with no explanation to how it came up with this. And those lists are what you expect. White people, able-bodied people. Do you have any wheelchairs in the room? Okay. Heterosexuals, awful people. Males, of course. Christians, of course. Middle or owning class people, which I take as saying if you worked really hard and were smart with your money and bought a house, then you're privileged. Middle-aged people, I don't get that, and English-speaking people. So everyone in this room has privilege, I would assume. And this represents what we're getting at today when we talk about orthodoxy. This is a radical oversimplification of the complexities of American society. It handpicks certain facts to construct a narrative that everyone on the bottom is a victim and everyone on the top is a predator. It gives no arguments, no counter-arguments. It gives no evidence. It just says things as they are. And this is indoctrination 101. This is religion. So let's just look at like two of these things. Okay, let's look at white people. Now, I'm not going to get into the whole white people thing, but I will say, where it matters in society, where privilege is concerned, white people are actually not the most privileged people in society. Asian Americans are by far the highest earning ethnic group and the most highly educated ethnic group. And if you include Jews as an ethnic group, they are second. So these are the things that matter in society, is how much money you make and how smart you are. This is how you're going to get ahead in American society. So white people are actually number 3. So, and then we can get into, there's a lot of things we talk about race, but we don't have a lot of time. Let's look at males, all right? I'm going to refer to some of my favorite political and philosophical thinkers alive today, and that is Christina Hoff Sommers, who I'm aware spoke here, and Camille Paglia, both feminist theorists and scholars. All right, so this paper is telling us that men are privileged. Well, actually, according to both of these feminist scholars, I'm going to pick from several of their works and interviews and videos to make this argument, women across all ethnic lines are actually doing much better than men. Women get higher grades in school. They get higher accolades in school. They're far more likely to go to college. 2015, 11.5 million women were in college in the United States versus 8.7 million men. If you look at the labor force, of the 5,000 Americans who were killed on the job in roughly every year, 92% are male. The gender wage gap is a myth. We all know that. We can talk about that later if you have a question, but it's been debunked by countless liberal economists even. Studies indicate that some female executives actually, or most female executives, actually earn more than their male counterparts. When you look at violence, according to the US Bureau of Justice statistics, more men in this country are raped than women. And that is because when you factor in prison rape. Now, of course, it's true that outside of the prison, women are far more likely to be victims of sexual assault. But the number that you hear on campus, 1 in 5, is simply not true, and that's also been debunked. The actual number is closer to 1 in 40 or 1 in 30, which is obviously still way too high, and I think, like Ben Shapiro, all rapists should be castrated and hung in prison. But men still remain much more likely the victims of all violent crimes in America. 78% of murder victims are men. 78% of suicides are men. 98% of federal prison inmates are men.
Hey, I defend your right to free speech. You have it. There's a Q&A afterwards. Let them talk.
No, these weren't cues. This was just demands.
Yeah.
You know, say.
I was just trying to.
I heard like a gnat in my ear. I was just going on. According to a study from the University of Michigan Law School, when men and women are convicted of the same crime, men get a 60% longer sentence than a woman. 60% of homeless people are men. 85% of active duty service members are men. Women live 5 years longer than men on average in the United States. Now, I love women. I'm a big old fag, and all my best friends are women. But I love men. I'm not a man hater. Does this sound like privilege to you? Does this sound like, do you want to be paying money to go to a school that doesn't give you facts like this and then give you the opposing facts on crap like this and have an interesting discussion about race, about gender, about the complexities of American society?
If you want to join them.
You're not happy with me.
No, you can continue. It's okay.
I know I can continue. I'm going to. Thank you very much. You can save your questions to the end or you can leave. Well, if you don't have any questions, then shut up. Yeah. Hello? All right. All right. These people, who cares about these people? They can leave. All right. So this obviously is not limited to Portland State. I bring up this paper, but this is how education is functioning now in America. Just this week in the New York Times, many of you may have seen, there was an op-ed written by some jackass named Ulrich Bayer, who's a professor and vice provost at NYU. And he was talking about the free speech controversy or struggle that's happening on campus right now, and wrote that what restricting speech means is greater freedom for everyone. In this op-ed in the Times, he said, quote, he said that the recent demonstrations against what I would say so-called provocative voices, quote, should be understood as an attempt to ensure conditions of free speech for a greater group of people. This is shutting down speech. Rather than censorship, he said, liberal free speech advocates, this would be the Bill Maher's, liberal free speech advocates rush to point out that the views of these individuals must be heard first to be rejected. But this is not the case, he says. I wonder how much money he makes at NYU, by the way. He goes on to talk about, quote, the necessary conditions for speech to be a common public good. This requires, he says, the realization that in politics, the parameters of public speech must be continually redrawn to accommodate those who previously had no standing. I have a bunch of quotes from him, but I don't even want to read from him anymore. So this is a very typical argument of the anti-free speech movement. And if we boil down this shit stew, cockamamie, nonsensical, circular logic, 25-cent word editorial in the New York Post, What it comes down to is 5 words. What this guy is saying is less speech is more speech. Restricting speech and establishing parameters around what is acceptable speech is the only way you get more speech. This is what he says. This is literally Hitler. I'm just kidding. But this is literally doublethink. This is what George Orwell wrote about in 1984. Hopefully everyone here has read 1984. It's more relevant now than ever since the feral left has been let off its leash. So in 1984, doublethink is seen in phrases like for those who haven't read it, the totalitarian leftist government that controls everyone's thoughts and movements and thoughts is called the English Socialist Party, or INGSOC. And their slogans are war is peace, freedom is slavery, ignorance is strength. And it's a tool of brainwashing in this novel. In the novel, Orwell describes doublethink as, quote, the power of holding 2 contradictory beliefs in one's mind simultaneously and accepting them both. To know and not to know. To be conscious of complete truthfulness while telling carefully constructed lies, to hold simultaneously 2 opinions which cancel out, knowing them to be contradictory and believing in both of them, to use logic against logic. So to Mr. Bayer at New York University, my counter-argument is simply, you're wrong, more speech is actually more speech. Now, let's go back to our power and privilege paper and look at what they say about race. So in this paper, students are being told, quote, race is actually an invention. It is a way of arbitrarily dividing humankind into different groups for the purpose of keeping some on top and some at the bottom. It's an invention. Very next sentence. To acknowledge that race is a historical arbitrary invention does not mean that it can be thereby easily dispensed with as a reality in people's lives. To acknowledge race as an invention of colonialism is not the same as pretending to be colorblind. Our world has been ordered and structured on the basis of skin color, and that oppressive ordering and structuring is called racism. This is from literature here, read students. This is the same thing. Race is not real, it's an invention. Race is very real, and you never forget that. This is what this is saying. Now, let me now quote Joseph Stalin, the Soviet dictator and probably the largest mass murderer of the 20th century. Joseph Stalin once said in a speech, quote, we are for the withering away of the state, and at the same time, we stand for the strengthening of the dictatorship of the proletariat. The highest development of power of the state with the object of preparing the conditions of the withering away of the state, that is the Marxist formula. Is it contradictory? Yes, it is contradictory. But this contradiction is a living thing and wholly reflects the Marxist dialectic. We are here to destroy the state. We are here to strengthen the state. Now, anyone who gets this in a future class, this is what you have to do to it. I would encourage all of you to throw this away, throw it in your professor's face, walk out, sign up for a new class. And while you're thinking,
I've never got anything.
these people are so incredibly rude. Why are you so rude? What are you afraid of? Can you not argue? Can you not wait till the Q&A and be polite? We're being very polite to you. We're letting you be here with your stupid signs. I respect that. Why don't you shut up and have respect for your fellow students? You're being incredibly rude. Take your conversation out to the hallway.
I'm just here stopping by.
Well, shut up so people can come here.
My friend, free speech. Shut up.
This is ridiculous.
Yeah,
No, this is manners. You'll have your chance to speak at the end.
and then you're gonna.
This is, I know you have. You guys have been very polite. I've acknowledged that several times.
And you call
These
your
people are
friends
talking.
stupid.
All right. Are you going to keep talking? We can wait.
I'm okay.
I'm not talking.
These people are ridiculous.
If you're gonna go though,
Can we have some respect for everyone else in the room?
50 now, though. Hey, everybody.
Well, if we
Have you
have the
voted
floor.
for 50 now?
What's
I didn't know what these people were talking about.
Well, you gave us the floor.
Yeah, so you said you.
Oh yeah, well I mean, okay, well you're an economist, we can talk about that later too. You can ask that during your question time. I would love to talk about raising the minimum wage. It's something I used to believe in and now I see it differently. All right. These people are getting excited. All right. This is going to apply to these people. All right. When you're let's think about people who are obsessed with political correctness, shall we?
Homegirl got pissy.
There is that sounds like cultural appropriation to me, Whitey. So let's think about these. Okay, let's think about these people who are really into social justice, who are really into identity politics and progressivism. Andy, can you help with this? And this applies to professors as well. When they give you literature like this, I think that you should not only be questioning the contents of the things that they're teaching you, but I think you should be really looking at their character and why they might believe these things and why they might be forcing this upon you. What do they have to lose if this religion they built around themselves of social justice comes crumbling down? And why do they have to continue to tell people about it? So there's a study done in 2015, a University of Toronto study by the wonderful professor and clinical psychologist Jordan Peterson, who I believe is speaking here next week sometime, and PhD student Christine Brofrey, I'm not sure how to pronounce the name. But this study looked at what motivates people psychologically across the political spectrum. And it found that there are predicators that determine whether you'll be really into political correctness. The study found that you can parse it out into essentially, on the far left end of the spectrum, two types of politically correct individuals. And they identified those two types as PC egalitarians and PC authoritarians. And the study found that PC authoritarians, which would be the most extreme social justice warriors, these very distressed people who are here tonight, have a very, very low verbal cognitive ability. It also found they have a very high interpersonal disgust sensitivity. So this is people who really don't like shaking hands, they really don't like taking a drink after someone. The study also found that high instances of PC authoritarianism, there was a presence much higher than the general population of a mood or anxiety disorder, clinically diagnosed, whether within that individual or a very direct family member. So these personality traits, according to these researchers, resulted in a very high intolerance for nuance, which is sort of what this is about, and the unknown. A very general level of distress accompanied these people in their everyday interactions in society. So basically, mentally ill. Egalitarian PC folks, the study found, were predicated by actually having a very high verbal cognitive ability and had sort of joined the movement by attending a seminar or class that was exposing them to differences in individuals. And PC authoritarians had egalitarians also had a very high level of compassion. So they gravitated towards the authoritarians and would feel a very strong need to protect them and to speak for them because they're not very capable of speaking for themselves. So these might be your gender studies professors, for example. And Dr. Peterson said of this study in an interview I saw, quote, "If you think about parents and infants, your infant is never wrong. If your infant is distressed, the distress signals that you should always do something about it." He said, "You're not ever going to be critical of your infant's distress. What we're seeing on the left is a transmutation," this part's a quote, "is a transmutation of that attitude onto the political sphere. The rise of the Freudian Oedipal mother who wants to protect her child so strongly she destroys its autonomy." Now, is there authoritarianism on the right? Sort of. There's certainly extremism on the right. But the way I'm seeing things is
Are you triggered?
you wish. No. So the common narrative that how we think about, the way I am seeing things, my personal opinion is that the right versus left paradigm has been greatly perverted and warped since the culture wars began in the 1960s. So the way most people think of right versus left is on the right, you have purity and traditionalism. And on the left, you have avant-garde and experimentalism. And if you follow those two ideologies to their end, on the right, you would get, this is how most people think, Nazi Germany. You would get racial purity. You would get extreme oppression. And if you followed the left, you would get anarchy, essentially, everything breaking down. Both their own kind of hell. But this is an absolute perversion of how the right and left have always been thought of in this country. My opinion is that you actually can't be a right-wing authoritarian if you're truly right-wing, if you truly believe in the way the right thinks. Because the basic paradigm between right and left has always been one of less government and more government. So if you follow that down the line, when you have in like the 1990s, okay, the right wing was very oppressive towards culture. They were, preachers talking about murdering gays. They wanted to ban violent video games. They wanted to silence Marilyn Manson. You had President George H. Bush, going on giving a speech about how The Simpsons was really bad for the American family. So these are very oppressive things happening in culture from the right wing in the 90s, which, I was alive then, so I can speak of that, but these parties switch it up. That part of the right has largely thanks to Donald Trump, been totally forced out of the political dialogue. They're still there, obviously, but they don't have the microphone. What's happened now is the extreme left has done what the extreme right did in the 90s to their party, and they've taken over the Democrats in this side. And they become authoritarian, as the evangelicals tried in the 90s. So if you, the old battle of the sort of evangelicals versus gays is really no more. Like, just use that as an example. The new political paradigm in this country, as I see it changing, and I hope it continues to go this way, because I think this is the best thing for this country, is to no longer think of it as right versus left, because the social issues are no longer there. The right does not care about social issues. The left is obsessed with them, but the right doesn't give a fuck. And now what we have is a political dialogue that looks more like nationalism versus globalism, libertarianism versus authoritarianism, and individualism versus collectivism. And the left can't handle that because they need to hang on to these old stereotypes they have of the right being the racist, the whatever their signs say back there. And if you look at the media and the left's favorite American figure right now, Richard Spencer. We all know who Richard Spencer is, right? He's that fucking moron, inbred nobody who is, the media was so happy when they found him. They had been searching for this person for years because you can't find an actual racist in America if you fucking try. They just don't fucking exist. These people who advocate for white supremacy. Yeah, laugh all you want. I'm laughing at you. These people do not fucking exist. They were so happy when they found Richard Spencer. They're like, finally, we have a white supremacist. And he has like 9 followers, and they're all like mutants who live under power lines and read the Daily Stormer in their underwear all day long. But we got him. Let's put him on TV as often as we can. Let's give him a platform. This is Trump's America, right? Well, I hate to tell it to you, but Richard Spencer is a leftist. If you know what Richard Spencer advocates, he is advocating for he doesn't call himself a white supremacist. Obviously, privately, I'm sure he's a white supremacist. A white supremacist would be defined by someone who thinks that the white race is superior to other races for whatever reasons. But Richard Spencer advocates for a white ethno-state alongside a black ethno-state and an Asian ethno-state because for some fucking reason he believes that the races do better when they only interact with each other. So if you follow this logic, what Richard Spencer, the media's prime example of alt-right extremist, ends up being is an extreme expansion of state power. If you were to have to establish this ethno-state, well, you need a totalitarian government to do it. You have to expand the government to firstly create this state and purge the races and then to maintain it. So he's a leftist. I'm sorry. He's an authoritarian. He's not a right-winger. Right-wingers are about freedom. They're about personal responsibility and individualism, not a big government telling people how to live and who to interact with. So this is also why Sharia law is leftist, because it's authoritarian. It seems that believing in the existence of 72 virgins is very different than the existence of 72 genders. But the end game of these social engineering philosophies that try to control how people behave and how they think is always authoritarianism. That's always it. The right wing doesn't want to be told what to think or how to behave. This would also probably explain why the left is so reluctant to criticize Sharia law. Religion of peace, more doublethink. It's no coincidence that leftism today looks very much like a strict religious order, such as Sharia or the evangelical Republicans in the 1990s. A lot of people have been talking about this lately. My friend, the writer Andrew Sullivan for New York Magazine, who I adore, although I hate it when he bashes President Trump, addressed this in a piece for New York Magazine last month titled, "Is Intersectionality a Religion?" And in that, he posits that intersectionality, social justice, the modern left, all of this represents, quote, classic orthodoxy through which all human experience is explained and through which all speech must be filtered. Intersectionality, the progressive left, resembles religion in so many ways. It comes with original sin. Check your privilege. You have to acknowledge inside of you must confess this original sin inside of you. It comes with a sort of, checking one's privilege is a sort of cleansing ritual, which all religious sects and all cults have. It's about recognizing the evil within oneself and needing to purge that evil. Like most religions, leftism has both a hostile and a co-opting approach to science. The left is openly dismissive of basic biology when it comes to gender, but cherry-pick junk data for narratives that they like climate change. Very much similar to how the Catholic Church would have treated someone like Galileo, or many other countless scientific heretics who were oppressed by dominant religious orthodoxies of their time that went against the party line. Like religion on the left, anyone who sees the world differently from you is not only wrong, but they're immoral and they're evil. In Scientology, these people are called suppressive persons, or SPs. I'm an SP to these people in the back. In the puritanical movement, and it is a puritanical movement known as Progressivism, victimhood is sainthood. This is the highest status you can achieve. According to progressive ideology, or theology, people like me, a gay, who comes out against them, has a specific spiritual condition known as internalized depression. This piece of shit that I tore up earlier identified internalized depression as members of target groups exhibit internalized depression when they alter their attitude, behavior, speech, and self-confidence to reflect the stereotypes and norms of the dominant group. Internalized depression can cause low self-esteem. I certainly don't have that. Self-doubt, I don't have that. And even self-loathing, well, yes, I do have that. But it's no wonder why the number one attack I get from leftists, especially online, is to call me a self-hating gay or an Uncle Tom. They do this to blacks, and they do this to women who also challenge their orthodoxy. This is the book of Genesis, right? People who aren't supposed to be against the left are the fallen man. They might know this if they weren't so busy burning books, like every puritanical cult before them, or the Nazis. Like all puritanical movements, leftism believes its moral imperative is above the law. This is why we have violence at Berkeley, at Middlebury. This is why we have violence on Inauguration Day. This is why we have leftists, proven fact, faking bomb threats against Jewish community centers, kicking over Jewish tombstones, painting swastikas, and pretending like it's coming from the right, because they believe their moral imperative to further their message is above the law, and they will go at any extent to make sure that they win. Now, this makes a lot of sense when you consider, I read this in another article, which I found interesting, that most well-educated liberal America is post-Protestantism. The majority of well-educated liberal America grew up Methodist or Lutheran or Protestant, whatever, and they've left the church. And maybe one of the reasons that we can explain the emptying of churches in America is that leftist culture and leftist political ideology fills that basic human need that they would have been getting at church. It fills this need of guidance, of an explanation for suffering. This is what religion does for people. It is comforting. It provides that basic need we all have. Even as an atheist, and we might deny it, we all do have this, and I'm an atheist, impulse to want to believe in something greater than us. Be it an all-loving God or a vengeful patriarchy. Now, I want to go back to, this is the last bit, the night of my great sin, when I admitted in the New York Post to eating from the tree of knowledge, like Eve, and coming out conservative. Now, I didn't know what awaited me after this happened. So weird. See how nasty they are?
You're hurting his feelings.
See how nasty they are? My
You
feelings
are
aren't hurt. I'm not a victim like you. I can stand here all day. I'm not a victim. I'm just annoyed because you're rude.
I have to leave. I just want to say to all of you, I hope we can all work
Oh,
together
we're all going to miss
someday.
you. Well, I'd love to actually have a discussion with you sometime.
I am black. I am disabled. I am a woman. I don't play the. I don't. Anybody who's totally. I play the victim.
Sorry, is this your talk or mine?
I hope we can all work together someday.
I hope so too. It would have been really nice if you listened and then stayed for the Q&A.
I have to go.
Okay, well, these people, we're all busy here, so come on.
People who aren't
Great.
But I hope someday we
Get
can
your own
all
talk.
see
Great.
the state has an imperative to pit us against each other. But I hope you have a great night. Hi, Olivia. I know you know my name. Stop being dumbass sports fan. Okay, bye.
That was more entertaining than anything I could do tonight, guys. All right. I'm pretty lucky if this is all we got. This is actually, I mean, I was really hoping to make the national news, so you guys have really not helped my Twitter following right now.
Girl, there's still time. We could punch you too. Sorry, not a threat, and illusionary.
She just said that we can punch you too for the microphones.
That was my illusionary defense, not a threat against you.
All right, okay. All right, everyone. Okay, I'm almost done. Then we can get to the questions. I just want to, well, maybe we should just get to the questions. Can you do that? You want to have a little, okay, I got a little story. I got a sweet little story I want to tell you guys. All right, so this New York Post story runs. I didn't know what was going to happen, right? I'm 33 years old. I was sort of like, yeah, I'm probably going to lose all my friends. I'm probably going to lose my job, but I didn't think it would change my life. I really thought that I would get trolled by the same lefties who've been trolling me for a while on social media, and that would sort of be it, and whatever. What ended up happening was I received thousands upon thousands of messages from all over the world, from all walks of life, from people of support that still continue to this day. And it was, I would say, probably 50% conservatives of all walks of life, from evangelical Christians to libertarians to establishment Republicans, lots of gay conservatives, and all telling me, I love you, I support you, and not just short, simple messages. These were long paragraphs that people were writing to me, and it was so incredibly moving. I had no idea these people existed. I really, really didn't. And the other 50% of the messages I got were from disaffected Democrats, from people who were saying, I feel very similarly how you do. I'm not a conservative, but I can't speak up, and thank you for saying these things. And same thing, all these personal stories. This one time I was at a dinner party and I tried to say this and they almost kicked me out. And it was very, very moving, and I was not expecting it. And mainly because I believed the narrative of fascists that people were saying about the right. That I didn't think I was going to find a community on the right. I didn't think I was going to find actually incredibly engaged, incredibly smart, warm, loving, caring people who really don't have time to try to fight you when you call them racist, because they know they're not racist, or all of these other things. It was very, very beautiful. So what happened that night was I was reading all these messages, and I got into bed and I was exhausted, and I was like, I'm gonna check my phone one more time, and this email popped up. And it was from a guy who I'll call John. It's like just come through, and he was like hello, my name's John, I'm 31 years old, I'm a native New Yorker, I'm working class, I work a blue-collar job, and I'm gay. And no one knows that I'm gay, because it's not that I have an issue with it. I'm very comfortable with myself. I don't have any shame whatsoever, but it's because I'm conservative, and I love my conservative values. And he said, I've tried over many years to go to gay bars and meet people, and I never feel like I fit in, and I don't feel like I dress nice enough, and I don't feel like I'm attractive enough, and when I do start talking to people, whenever everything turns to politics, I can't open my mouth, because I know they're going to think I'm stupid, or think that I'm racist, and so I just stopped trying. And he said, I read your story in the New York Post, and I didn't know people like you existed, and thank you. And this touched me so much, and I cried a little, and because I was thinking about how much the gay community has meant to me my entire life. And when I came out at 15 years old, I would have been fucked if I didn't have that support system. I immediately had this beautiful new world open up to me and embrace me. And of course that world came with a common enemy, and that's hating the right. And that's been a similar experience to me coming out conservative. This whole new world I never knew existed opened up to me, and it's been beautiful. I'm not kidding you. It's been really lovely and warm. And the reason why I bring up that story about that guy who wrote me is that when I think about hearing about the Queer Resource Center here, not putting up my flyer, not that I need to see my face up, I don't care, but when I think about what's behind that, it's really disgusting and really hypocritical. This is all gay resource centers and community centers across the country. This is the gay left. And I'm focusing on the gays because I know them so well. But these are people who have made their life work standing up for a population that, rightly so, they say is more prone to violence, to suicide, to drug abuse, to addiction, to promiscuity, to disease, to homelessness. And here they are. I'm not just picking on here, because this is the same at the Resource Center in New York City. They are ignoring a huge percentage of gay people based on politics. It's estimated 1 in 5 gay people vote conservative. Probably a lot of lesbians in that. And it's if you decide to shun a huge percentage of your community simply because they might not agree with your political views, which you must admit have become radical, you're denying people a chance to, and I'm not talking about me, I don't care. I'm strong. I do not care that I've been rejected by the gay community. I really, really do not. I've had my run. It was fun. I had a lot of good times. I'm moving on. But the young people who might be so turned off by this, you're completely turning them away based on their politics. It's denying them a chance to true happiness, of living authentically in their minds and in their views, as I've discovered and as I'm now doing. You're denying kids this, gay kids. So for people who do that, I would also suggest that you start living authentically. And that, I believe, starts by admitting that you're a nasty little hypocrite. And as for everyone else here tonight, you've been very lovely. Thank you so much. And let's have some questions.
I know it's a small room, but we're going to walk around the microphone just so the recordings can capture everyone's voices.
Hi.
Yeah, hi, I'm Blake.
Hi, Blake. Nice to meet you. Chadwick.
Just calling whoever, and I don't know if we've said this, but
Yeah, whichever one of you guys, let's go 1 and 2 then.
No way. Before I ask my question, I just want to point out that I'm a left-wing, big government, big tax guy, and I should be on their side, but I'm tired of their racism and hypocrisy because as the son of a prostitute, foster kid, homeless for 3.5 years who was hassled by cops, and the only one in my family to go through college, not to have a drug problem, and it was really hard not to do heroin when everybody else in the alleyway was. Mm-hmm. I've never had white male privilege. It just doesn't count. My gender, my religious belief, or anything. I know nothing about you. What I care about is your ideas and how you articulate them. And it's not really a question. I just want to thank you so much for having the bravery to do that. As a person that tried to be like the big liberal guy in my small hometown, right?
Yeah.
And then I come here and I realize I'm not fucking liberal at all compared to these people. Right?
I had the same experience.
I just want to congratulate you and say that you are an inspiration for people. And I know gay people that are conservatives that can't talk about it.
Yeah.
And thank you for coming out, man. Thank you.
Well,
so
thank you.
much.
No, thank you for what you're saying. I think that was more powerful than anything I said. Thank you. Oh yeah. This gentleman over here.
Thanks for coming out. So you mentioned about some of your journalistic work in Russia. Now, I understand that they have it's called the gay propaganda law.
Right.
It's like a national, stay in the closet policy, I guess.
Mm.
So how is it that they have a gay club in Moscow it's called Propaganda? It's pretty funny. But how is it they would be able to have a gay club in Moscow? Wouldn't they shut that down?
Well, so so I went right after that law was passed. This was July 2013. So this is very weird. I mean, this is sort of how Russia operates. This is very much how authoritarian states operate. Is like this law was really no different than many of like a series of very bizarre, vague laws. So this one it made it illegal to propagandize homosexuality to children, and that's essentially all the law said. So suddenly it was like, well, what does that mean? Can you not hold hands in public if a child's nearby? Can you not fly a rainbow flag or whatever? But sort of what these laws do is they don't really. So far, a lot of them don't mean anything. But the big fear is that they set the stage for something really authoritarian and nasty because it really gives the government tons of power because they're so vague and unspecific. So Moscow, though, is a city of 12 million people. It's a fascinating place. And there's only about 6 gay bars in Moscow. And versus New York, which is 8.5 million, and there's probably 300 gay bars. So the gay bars are very, very interesting, and they're all hidden. One I went to was probably less than a mile from the Kremlin, and you go down this alleyway, and there's this sort of glass box, maybe from here to this wall, and it was a flower shop. And all the lights are off, and the people who took me there, you had to open up the doors unlocked and open up the floor and go downstairs. And there was this gay bar, and there were all these Russian men in silk shirts, dancing to Russian pop music and eating, caviar, Russian meats and eggs and whatever. But so it's interesting. So I could do a whole talk on Russia because it's so fascinating. I hung out with the guy who owns the 2 largest gay clubs in Russia, one in Moscow and one in St. Petersburg. And he was just sort of oh, we don't worry about the government, it's fine. What we're really worried about is the real estate industry. So while I was there, I was hanging out at his club all the time. And during the week I was there was a poison gas attack in the club, there was a shooting in the club, and then the day after I left, 100 men showed up. This is the biggest nightclub in the city. 100 men showed up and climbed on the roof and started dismantling the roof out of nowhere. And I was interviewing him, and I was what the hell is going on? This is all this. And he was oh, that's just my landlord. He's trying to get rid of the lease, and he wants to scare people not to come here anymore. And I was like, so you're not worried about the government? He's like, oh, they don't care, whatever. This is all about business. This is my landlord. It's a very, I mean, I could talk about Russia, but I'm happy to talk about Russia later. It's very complicated. But I did find like, yeah, I'll be hanging around, yeah. I've loved the Russian people. I found them to be really warm and smart, yeah. Mm-hmm.
Hey, Sarah. I was just wondering what your views were on climate change. If you took like the more right-wing route and kind of got stuck into that, or if you actually look at the facts and such.
I'm looking at the facts differently, without a doubt. Do I think the planet's warming? Yes. Do I think that humans are the cause? Probably. Do I think the United States Congress can save planet Earth? No. Do I think that the effects of climate change are going to be totally catastrophic in 20 years, and famine and flood and disease and all these other things? No, I'm not so on board with that. No one in the scientific community has said that. That's all leftist propaganda. But yeah, I think it's happening. I don't want to pollute the earth. Conservatives don't want to destroy the earth. This is another one of these myths, right? Like conservatives hate nature. It's not true. But it's become so politicized. They can't help themselves. It's become so politicized that I think climate change is one of those issues where actually the parties could have come together, but the left made it so politicized and ran so far with it that the right then ran the other direction. And now that the right's in power, they're going to do more damage than they would have had there been this sort of, like I always say about the left, if they just dial it down a notch, then they would get so much further. If they did that with climate change and many other issues. But when they run so far, the right runs in the other direction, and then nothing gets accomplished, and things end up bad for everyone. I think, and the right does that too. I mean, both political parties do that. I shouldn't just pick on the left in that instance. But yes.
Thanks for coming. I appreciate a lot of what you said. One of the things that worries me the most right now is how the right and left talk to one another, not just what they say. It seems like a lot of really good ideas get bogged down with insults and things like that, and so I'm wondering how you see yourself. So I'm really worried about the rhetoric that people use. I'm wondering how you see yourself in the national conversation, how you participate in that, and how you want to contribute in what way as far as how you express your ideas and how you want the conversations to go between right and left.
Yeah, well, thank you for asking that, and thank you for coming. I agree. I mean, I think we live in a time that 50% of the country is not talking to the other 50%. And that's awful. Now, I'm I will admit right now, I am totally just dropping bombs on social media and like having a great time, and I'm really enjoying free speech for the first time in my life, especially having worked in media. I could never be public about my opinions. So I'm not being a part of the solution right now, but I also like to say that when you leave a cult, the first thing you really are compelled to do is warn the world about that cult. So that's where I'm coming from. I do see myself, after this sort of wears off, because it's fun, and I'm actually really enjoying exploring conservative views, and I actually do have such a different opinion of the left than I always have had, and I really, really am enjoying communicating that and exploring that. But I do eventually, after this sort of calms down in a couple years, not just me, but I think the whole nation, I hope, is going to be ready to calm down and sit down together. I think we've really reached the zenith of our partisan politics. I really don't see how this cold civil war can get any worse unless it turns bloody, and I don't think that's going to happen. So I think people like me, and there are tons of people like me. I don't think that I'm going to be a super powerful voice, but people like me who have switched parties are really great agents, I think, to start bringing people together. I think as a nation, we're not there yet. I think the name calling, I think you're right. But people have to get sick of this. I really think that this country is moderates mostly. It still is. And I want them to rise up now, I think that'll be good. But thanks for the question. Yeah, hi.
So based on what you just said, yeah. Okay, so based on what you just said, did you state that you're not contributing to a good dialogue in this political climate, and that you're having fun with that, and that you would be willing to simmer down in a few years, but right now, currently, you would not be willing to help with that dialogue? Is that what you just stated?
Well, yes, but I'll explain why. The reason why I say that is that I said we're not at a point for that.
Because you're having fun with it? Is that why?
That's not the only reason. No, it's because my personal view where I stand is still that the right is the underdog, and they're continually being shit on by the most powerful institutions in our society, which are the media, Hollywood, and academia. So as long as these institutions are controlled by the left and shitting so hard on the right, as long as they continually propagate narratives of racism and fascism, you guys don't even know what a fascist is, by the way, I would love to ask you. Hitler was a National Socialist, by the way. I would love for you to tell me a 16th century a fascist, because that's when it started. But no, it's because the narrative is so against the right and against freedom that is why I have no problem right now standing up and dropping bombs against the left. And I'm a very powerful voice against them because I was one of them so long. So no, I do think I'm standing up for the little guy and the right side of history. They still own all the most powerful institutions in our culture. So everything is against them. I mean, like the social justice left likes to think of themselves as sort of punk and avant-garde, but I'm sorry, you're the man. You're the establishment.
Can I respond?
Yeah, sure, go ahead.
So I'm not criticizing you in the fact that you're speaking up for someone or a population, whatever, that is perhaps underrepresented in the media or in the political spectrum. But my issue is that basically what you're stating is there's no other way to create this dialogue. And you yourself, with your answer previously, recognize that you're contributing to a bad dialogue and you're continuing your same dialogue and you're not making any effort to fix that.
Well, at this moment, I'm not involved in really any dialogue because I'm not attacking liberals. I'm not going off on social media. When I'm communicating with people, it's mainly people who are on my side. This is camaraderie. This is talking about policy and ideas. So, to answer your question, I'm getting to know conservatives. I'm enjoying solidifying my political views. I'm reading so much more than I ever thought I ever would about conservatism. And this is where I am right now. Now, eventually I can see people, there's lots of people. David Horowitz is someone who is banned from all these campuses because he was an ex-liberal. But I don't know. I don't know what the future holds. But like I told this nice woman over here, is that I'm not saying I'm the person for this, but I do think that there are so many people who've switched party lines recently because the climate has become so toxic that those people are really great engines, hopefully someday soon, to start the dialogue between the two parties.
Could we start this dialogue, me and you, after this?
Yeah, sure. Yeah, I'd love to, yeah. Well, thank you for your question. Yeah. Yes, hi. I recognize you.
You do?
You follow me on Twitter, don't you? Or Facebook? Yeah, I recognize your face. Yeah,
Okay, so I just wanted to say that I was one of those people who wrote you a message when you came out, because I'm also one of those people who had to hide for so long in Portland especially, and I lost 95% of my friends over this election cycle. 95% decided they hated me because I was even center. Not even right yet. Not even right. You can't even be center.
Yeah.
Because it's evil to even be center, even be just reasonable and open-minded. You can't even be that. Because they'll hate you for that. Or they'll be like, they'll write you off as something else. And I wanted to say personally thank you for being as loud as you are. And he was saying maybe that's bad, you're being as loud as you are, but you're speaking up for people like me and for people who have to be quiet or they will lose their friends or their family or their job. That's just insane that you can lose your job over something like this. But I just want to say thank you and nice to meet you.
Thank you. I'm really sorry that happened to you, but I'm not surprised. I hate to say it because I've heard it so many times. So I'm sorry that's happened to you. I think there's someone behind you. Hi.
A lot of your rhetoric is based on the orthodoxy of the left. Would you recognize any sort of orthodoxy in the right in institutions like the military?
Well, what do you mean?
I served 5 years in the United States Marine Corps infantry, and I experienced a lot of racism. At one point, I was physically accosted by 3 drunk Marines while I was on duty. told that I'm not allowed to date white girls, and that the guys would beat my ass if his sister came home with somebody like me. I'm just confused as to why you think that orthodoxy is almost exclusive to the left wing. And when I came out as a liberal, small liberal, I lost 95% of my friends. I had guys who I had served with turn their backs on me based on my politics. I received death threats when things that I said on Facebook got blown up on a Marine social page.
Mm-hmm.
My family's personal information was listed. I was doxxed. I swallowed a lot of sleeping pills and almost committed suicide from it. So I'm confused as to why you think it's exclusive to the left when there are bastions of right-wing orthodoxy that exist, like the military. And voicing liberal opinions can get you shut down and turn you into an exile.
Well, I said, I've never been in the military. I've only written stories about the military. I don't know. These stories are familiar to many people. That's what you're telling. I'm sorry you went through that. That sounds terrible. The military is different than, the military is an institution, right? It's essentially like saying American culture versus, Citigroup. This is something that exists within our culture, right? Maybe it's a right. So maybe the military, the attitude and policies of the military skew right, is what you're sort of saying, right?
It's still right.
Well, I don't know. There's plenty of liberal. I know. I did a story on transgender people in the military. Like they're. Well, but to get to your question, what I explicitly said was that right now, I'm using the orthodoxy comparison for how the left is thinking and behaving, and I explicitly said right now in American culture, it's on the left. And I said in the 90s, it was definitely on the right. And I'm saying that it switches. And maybe it has something to do with when a party's been in power for too long, like when Reagan and then Bush. They get drunk on power, and then the fringes come in and dominate. Maybe that's what happened in the 90s. And maybe that's what's happening now with Obama in there for 8 years. And then Hillary not winning. And so that's what I'm saying. I'm not saying this is always a left thing. And I do anticipate. I anticipate in a generation that it's going to flip again. I certainly do. And when it does flip again, I will come out against that.
Authoritarianism with leftism.
Well, yeah, it is. Authoritarianism is left. This is the basic divide. But the left has been, the two parties have always balanced each other out, right? They don't let each other get too far. But now the parties have just run into their own corners, and there's not this dialogue. So and I was saying the end game, right? I wasn't saying every leftist in this country who's calling me a fascist knows that they want an authoritarian government. I'm just saying if you look at the political spectrum, if you follow it to the end, in some hypothetical, the end game is authoritarianism and the end game is anarchy. And why our society functions so well is that we have a constant battle between these two forces so that neither can get too much control, right? But now we have a place where nobody's talking to each other. And now whatever party is in power is going to try to run as far as they can to the other side. And power doesn't necessarily mean in government. It means in culture as well.
So why aren't you specifically advocating crossing aisles? Why aren't you advocating centrism? Why are you advocating specifically conservatism? Are you trying to balance things?
Because I am right-wing. Because to be a moderate, and even in that New York Post story, I essentially came out as a moderate, and I said to come out as...
You said the title of the article is "I came out as a conservative."
Right.
I came out.
Well, I don't write headlines if you know anything about journalism, and I didn't even write the story. I was interviewed by someone, so I had no control over that. When they told me they were going to use the C word, I look at conservatism as an umbrella term for.
You identified yourself as a conservative
absolutely.
Times tonight.
I have, yeah, and this is what I'm explaining to you. Conservatism is a nice umbrella term for everyone on the right. Where's a conservative?
Are you a conservative or?
Of course I'm a conservative, and under the conservative, of course, this is what I'm saying. Like, what don't you get about this? I just told you.
Why are you boxing people into it?
I'm not boxing.
Yeah.
Are you the one who's identifying himself as a conservative?
No, you're just
a centrist who would call himself.
And I said anyone who's fucking right of Trotsky is a conservative in this America. Okay.
I'm not calling you a conservative.
It's true.
I'm not calling you a conservative.
All right. Okay. Do you have another question? No. Okay. Would someone else like to ask a question? Oh yeah. Yes. Oh, sorry. And then we'll go to you. Sorry.
What are some maybe smaller, community level solutions to some of the problems from our friends in the back that wouldn't involve big government taking over things that could actually, because maybe some of them don't know that conservatives actually want more power at the local level.
Yeah.
So what are some solutions to some of their issues that could be tackled at a more local level?
I think you bring up a good point, because especially if you get outside of the coasts, if you get to like Tennessee, where I'm from, and I was just in Virginia, very, very deep, just above North Carolina border, doing a story. It was very, very rural, and very divided between red and blue in this small community. But people actually get along. Like in the middle of this country, like yeah, they sort of hate their politics, but I think in the coast it's been so dramatized. I mean, I personally don't have the answer to your question, but I think you're really onto something, that it really does happen on the local level, and I think it probably is. I think that small town America, more than anyone, people aren't media obsessed and plugged into social media all day and whatever, are probably just sick of it and getting along easier. Maybe. I don't know. I don't have an answer, but it's a good question. Yeah.
Hi. I was curious. While it's clear that the left supports things like increased immigration and everything, and an effort to garner extra votes and everything, I was curious, do you believe that the leftist support of gay communities is in the same fashion, especially after how they've treated you now that you've said that you're a conservative?
In the same fashion of getting votes?
Yeah. Do you believe that they're just supporting gays and various other minorities just for votes?
Oh, of course. It's a pay-for-play system.
Yeah.
Andrew Breitbart said that he came out conservative, came out against the left, based solely on the issue of race. And he attributed it to the Clarence Thomas hearings when he was nominated for the Supreme Court. And he saw, I can't quote him exactly, but from what I recall is he said, he saw how nasty the left treated this black man who was a conservative being nominated, and then he started looking into all these things and had this red pill moment of how he felt the left kept minorities oppressed for votes, and that they don't want to see these people succeed. I think a lot of people who switch over to conservatism have moments like this. It's actually issues of caring about race and wanting to see poor black communities succeed, and looking at Democrat-controlled cities in America that have the poorest black communities, and they've been controlled by Democrats for 60 years, and nothing has gotten better. And yet they keep voting Democrat. They're these two great, do you guys know Diamond and Silk? Those two black Trump supporters? Oh, they're so good, those ladies. They call it the Democrat plantation. But this is a huge thing. Most people, and I didn't realize this about the right until I got into the right, was that's how most people on the right view the Democratic Party, is really oppressive to racial minorities. So yeah, you're right to bring that up, yeah.
I was also curious, do you think that the left can be sustained during this, political climate and everything like that? Do you think that they can continue as a political party?
No, well, sadly, I think the Democrat Party will probably continue, but it has no reason to. I mean, political parties collapse all the time in this country. The Democrats, even like leftists aren't Democrats. The Democrats have become this like hypocritical, weird, corporatist, like globalist, whatever. Like these sort of like far left people aren't really Democrats. They're more Bernie people.
No.
So this, well, okay, whatever. She's with her.
Yeah,
whatever, yeah. Clinton Foundation. I would love to see the Democrat Party destroyed, and that's not to say we should have a one-party system in this country, but I think the best, most opportunity and the most prosperous America looks like a two-party system that is libertarian and sort of neocon establishment Republicans. I think that's much healthier, that's more freedom, that's more prosperity. The Democrat Party, I don't understand why they still exist. I would like to see them destroyed, but I think they're around for a while. But thank you for saying that.
Yeah, thank you.
Yeah.
So I think I agree with you on a lot of things, and I think a lot of our disagreements are going to be a matter of semantics. And just seeing the questioner who is a Marine and sort of the difficulty you had communicating with him. I guess my only advice would be it's like on that political compass test where you have left and right on one axis and authoritarian versus liberal on another axis. And I just think that might be a more useful paradigm in terms of explaining where you stand with people. And you might get more allies on the left, because I think there's a lot of people in here who are on the left, but who despise, the soap just kind of peanut gallery people that we have back here.
Yeah.
As well. So I don't know.
Yeah. No, my family's all liberals except for my dad, and like they're really, really great liberals out there. And when I'm bashing liberal, it's the far left that we've been talking about tonight. and the people who want to shut things like this down.
But there is a non-authoritarian left as well.
Of course, yeah.
And I would say there is an authoritarian right. So I think you might just be.
I know. I know exactly what you're saying.
Irritating people who would otherwise agree with you, except for the terminology.
Right. Well, yes. Yeah. Admittedly, what I was saying was an oversimplification because I don't have a diagram and a chart, and obviously there's like tons of nuance in all of this. But I was sort of saying the basic right versus left struggle. Yeah. Right. Yeah. Yes. But thank you for saying that. Yes. Hi. Yeah.
So, for starters, I'm glad that this conversation is happening, and I think that it needs to keep happening in all places. That being said, I do have a question. You talk about how you feel like you don't have free speech in some places and that free speech is being squandered. Are you also fighting then for the free speech of black gay Americans?
Why specifically black gay Americans?
Well, from what I've gleaned from my personal experiences, knowing people who side with the right side, they tend to, and I think you're making these same generalizations about the left as well, they tend to be racist. I'm sorry, I get really nervous.
No, it's okay. Don't be nervous.
But I want to know if you want them to have a voice as well.
Well, why wouldn't I? I mean, this is the most insane thing ever. And I'm not trying to insult you, but it's, of course, I want everyone to have a voice. That's why I said I'm very happy that these people are here. These people are especially being respectful. Why would I want? I live in New York City. Are you kidding me? Like, why would I not want black people to have a voice? I want everyone to have a voice. More speech, as I said, more speech is more speech.
So then would you condemn the racist things that our president has said?
Such as what?
I'm sorry.
All Mexicans are rapists is a good example of that one.
Well, he didn't say all Mexicans are rapists. He was talking about illegal immigration. And so everyone brings this up. NPR brought this up, and then they edited it badly when I was interviewed by them. But, God, we want to talk about Trump's racist Mexican comment? All right, here's how I look at that comment. No, I would never say anything like that. I don't personally know anyone, conservative or liberal, who would say anything like that. Donald Trump did not say all Mexicans are racist. He said that he was talking about illegal immigration. What he said was obviously factually incorrect. He said Mexico is sending its rapists, its murderers, its blah, blah, blah. So firstly, Mexico is not sending anyone. These are individuals who are coming over. Is there going to be a violent contingent in any population? Yes, of course. He said that. We all know it's this sort of fear-mongering campaign that he ran that really and immigration is a huge issue for his voters. It's a huge issue for people who don't live in nice cities on the coasts. I've been visiting them, these places. So we all know that most illegal immigrants who are in this country, who come here illegally, are peaceful, hardworking, contributing members of our society and our friends and our neighbors and our coworkers. Like, I've always felt that. But Trump he used some inflammatory language, but the only thing I know that he's actually said about all Mexicans is I love Mexicans, I love the Mexican people, which he said in a speech he gave in Mexico. So yeah, that's the line everyone likes to bring up. Another thing is that what I get about Donald Trump, and why even before I came out, I always said, even though I didn't like him as a candidate, I liked his supporters a lot, is that Donald Trump speaks in a way that is direct and crass and vulgar and not politically correct, and it really, really, really offends liberal, middle-class, polite sensibilities. And they freak out when they hear him talk. And what they don't understand is that many of his supporters, guess what, speak in a way that is direct, crass, vulgar, and offends their middle-class, liberally educated sensibilities. It doesn't mean these people are racist, you know? It's a communications outlet. That's why I've said that the anti-Trumpism is classism. It's total classism. But thank you for your question, yeah. Yeah, I mean, I don't like that he said that. I've never, but I get it.
Can you elaborate on the anti-Trump is classism?
It's, somebody had said earlier, somebody commented that, I think it was Jim, I think he left, that when he moved, what was it, he used to be like the liberal in the small town. Yeah, there you are, hi. The liberal in the small town, and when you came, that was my first, this was 13 years ago when I moved to New York City. I had the exact same thing. I was a liberal in Iowa, when I really believed liberals were the working class heroes. Yeah, I mean, this is a Trump voter. It's the same thing, right? So, well, in my opinion, but we can differ on that. But when I moved to New York City and I saw the hypocrisy and I saw like the Emerald City of liberalism, and it was like these unbelievably rich, smug, out of touch, destroying black neighborhoods to build their condos, and then, you know, like tweeting about Black Lives Matter or whatever, and like all this ridiculous bullshit. And I can't see it as anything but classism, you know? I hate, the media says white working class. No. You go to these communities like I was just in that have been bombed out by globalism, that have been bombed out by liberal economic policies. It's all races. And you know what? Those races get along so much better in rural red the South, in these working class communities, blend and get along so much better than anything I see in New York City, where it's sort of like, it's not a melting pot, it's more like a tossed salad, where just parts sort of like live next to each other but don't really, and mainly along class lines. Yeah, I think it's total classism, anti-Trumpism. And it's because they're white, they're allowed to get away with it, to hate those people and call them racists. Yeah. Yeah, hi.
Yeah, so you're talking about hypocrisy a little bit, and I'm curious because you share these ideas that are like, seem really anti-identity politics, right? So then my question is, does it not feel like even slightly hypocritical to market your speeches as you're a gay speaker, a gay conservative, and then share anti-identity politic rhetoric?
Well, I mean, I don't really market my own speeches. People market that because it gets people in, because it's gay conservative. No, I mean, I can talk about being gay and talk about the gay community without sort of saying that dictates how I think or see the world or try to force this perception onto other people. I was on a, so on your side, I was last night in Manhattan, I was on a panel for gay Republicans, and the whole thing started sounding so identity politics that I just kind of checked out, and I was like, this is like, I didn't want to talk about it anymore. So yeah, I get what you're saying, because I really don't like identity politics at all. I mean, they started talking about, I don't know, gay marriage or something, and I was like, oh, this is like, I feel like I'm in a Democrat paddle. But, I mean, whatever, yeah. Yeah, all right, thanks.
Hi, Chadwick. Thank you for coming.
Thank you, Andy.
Are you not concerned that in embracing and running with a right-wing or conservative identity as you have, that you might turn a blind eye to the excess of your new political identity, political alliance?
Turn a blind eye to the excesses? No, I think it's important to be, I don't see that happening yet, but I know what you're saying. I think it's, as I'd said earlier, it's important to be vigilant and to be aware. I think what separates, I think the Jordan Peterson mentioned this in this study when he was talking about the PC authoritarianism and the mental illness that goes along with that. That what sort of everyone has, obviously everyone's politics are influenced by emotional and personal and social circumstances, right? It's almost, people's political opinions tend to be always subjective, it seems. But I think the difference is being intelligent enough to be aware of that and to try to keep it in check. And I mean, I hope to be that. I don't see the party going to excess now, but obviously it could very quickly go there, especially with some of the rhetoric and the, you know. So yeah, I think it's just being vigilant. And hoping that you will continue to be vigilant, not get sucked in.
Right. And I'll out myself as as somebody who shared some of that power and privilege training material. I was one who shared it with you. And with all your criticisms of it, do you recognize that there is a lot of merit in perhaps maybe understanding the power dynamics that come with people in when I say privileged positions, I mean maybe, for example, I work in student media. I'm privileged in that the writings that I write are disseminated more so than somebody who's not working in student media.
Right. Yes, I absolutely think those conversations should happen and need to happen. My criticism of the campus left and of things like that, and I single that out just because it's exemplary of everything going on in campus, is that it's not an invitation to dialogue. It's presented as doctrine. So yes, these conversations should be had. I didn't present facts about male rape or whatever because I want to discredit the feminist story. It's that these facts are never heard. So yes, those conversations should happen. That's what college is supposed to be. But students instead are coming in and getting indoctrinated, and they're leaving stupider than when they came in. And I wouldn't encourage anyone to go to college today. Until things change, I really wouldn't. I'm still paying off my loan. Yeah.
Hi. So
Hi.
I disagree profoundly with nearly everything you've said. I really despise your rhetoric, but I also would like to thank you for being here.
Well, thank you.
Thank you.
Do not clap for me. Do not clap for me. Oh, she's coming for me, guys. Hold on.
I think that it's impossible to market yourself as being all for free speech when you espouse rhetoric that talks about how, people are just making up 75 genders and that's...
Well, they are. Facebook is complicit in this.
Okay, sure. Whatever. You're welcome to your free speech, and I would also...
You are too.
I would like to apologize for something I said a little bit earlier. I alluded to Richard Spencer being punched, and I'm not really for violence, and I would never want anything bad to happen to any of you. And I hope that we can all craft policy together that protects everyone.
I agree with you, and thank you for
That's
that.
not what you want. This is after someone said they screenshotted her words.
Hey, let her. She came up here. She waited in line.
Yeah, this is a nice statement. So I thank you for saying
That was a
that.
nice statement.
And I'm happy to disagree with you.
Okay, yeah.
But thank you. That was very good. That was very nice of you. Thank you.
So I actually have a legitimate question this time. So I want to ask you about your atheism. So I myself am an atheist, and with the new atheist movement of the early 2000s, which is what kind of got me into atheism, and Christopher Hitchens especially. He's amazing. He was wonderful. If there is a saint, he's a saint.
Base dad.
Right?
Mm-hmm.
But my question for you is, what he really talked about in his philosophy was the danger of orthodoxy and holding an idea in your head that can't be wrong.
Yes.
Right? And I think the beauty of atheism and where it leads you is that you have doubt. And I just wonder, of your current beliefs, is there anything, could you be wrong? Do you have any kind of doubt? If I presented a good liberal, big government idea and you're like, well, actually in this situation, that makes sense, you'd be cool with it? Because I'd be cool with a conservative idea.
Yeah.
If I'm wrong, I'm wrong.
Well, at this particular moment, I've been liberal my entire life, so I would say no, but ask again in 5 years. But no, with I actually had this whole thing about Christopher Hitchens and atheism that I was going to talk about, and I cut it for time.
If you haven't seen Christopher Hitchens, YouTube him.
Yeah.
Right after this, he's amazing.
With atheism, so you mentioned atheist movement, and I'm one of those that's sort of like, that to me is like it's like thou protest too much. And so I'm an atheist and I just don't have to talk about it because I'm so convinced in my belief that there's nothing out there that why would I join some sort of movement to profess it? I just don't care. However, to be fair, I actually have been more open to the idea of God and spirituality, and I see it from a different angle now of more value. Did you read that or did you hear about that book that a friend of Hitchens wrote after he died about his sort of, basically it was about Hitchens actually being open to the idea of God while still being an atheist, but sort of understanding it more?
Yeah,
it's beautiful, but he got attacked for it.
Yeah, when you didn't have...
But of course Hitchens is open to God.
If you see Hitchens in a private conversation, he's not... Hitchens on stage.
Exactly.
So he was a very complicated guy. But I was just trying to bring that up on the idea, because you kept mentioning orthodoxy.
Yeah.
And I think the big danger is, especially even me as a liberal too, is sometimes you can get these ideas in your head that you say, no, this has to be the way it is.
Right.
And we need to be pragmatic, and we need to be skeptical, and we need to, just think about it.
Honestly, that's one of the reasons why I've started thinking more about God, because I can't be so dogmatic in my atheism without at least giving this a thought, And with Hitchens, it's how could he spend his entire career being the poster child of atheism, and most of his friends and debate partners were hardcore, devout, religious people? How can he spend his life without actually really going into thinking about where they're at and engaging with it and giving it, an intellectual.
And he would ask the reverse of Mother Teresa. So
Of course.
There you go.
Yeah, she was a crook.
Right?
She's
the worst.
That was a good point. Thanks. Yeah. Hey.
Hi. Thank you for coming.
Thank you.
I was just wondering how we could get moderates to speak up, because it seems like here on campus they're extremely afraid, but as soon as the doors close behind and they look, they're at the table amongst their friends, they kind of look around and make sure that there's no screaming liberals around.
Yeah.
They actually profess their actual ideas, and I mean they're not necessarily even conservative. I've met plenty of left-leaning centrists who still feel scared to express their actual viewpoint. So how do we get them to?
My first question is, where's a moderate? Like, can you find me one? I mean, I would even say like Dave Rubin is extremely moderate, really, really smart guy. And he was here, I believe, and there were protests, and he was called a fascist and all these other things. I couldn't think of anyone who's more level-headed, just off the top of my head, and moderate than Dave Rubin, and still fascist, blah, 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 blah. So
I mean, like the average, moderate university student or just average citizen. I mean, they're typically afraid to speak. So
I agree with you, and that's what a lot of people have told me, strangers privately. It's that exact thing. I'm scared to speak. I don't have the answer. I just think that it can't continue. There's going to be some sort of shift in culture, but I don't know how long that's going to take. But yeah, you're right. The people don't. Yeah. Yeah. Thank you.
Hi, so I have a quick question.
Sure.
You kind of touched on earlier about authoritarianism, the left, and the Nazi Party. The people behind clearly didn't accept that. I was hoping you could touch on why you have the view that authoritarianism is leftism and why conservatism would not be so.
Well, so that's what I was saying, and this is just my perspective, is that it's just the classic sort of battle of American politics, which boils down to what is the role of government and the size of government. The right says less, the left says more. So, and I was saying, as I mentioned this before in a comment, was following those ideologies to the end, you get, in this sort of dystopian future, is anarchy and 1984, Oceania, So that's what I was talking about then. And obviously, I don't think that's going to happen to America, but it seems the threat is there now, just on the left, as it was in the 90s. No, wait, I'm just contradicting myself. I was saying, I mentioned that before the culture war started, it seemed that American politics was more on that course, and then it became about the values. And the right, and I hope it stays this way, is no longer concerned with these social issues and no longer wanting to be oppressive to culture. And so I hope that the political spectrum just becomes more about this issue. That's sort of what I was referring to. Yeah, thank you, yeah. Do you want to? Yeah.
Thank you so much, everyone, for coming and asking your questions.
You guys.
I know it's been a really contentious night, and we do, as free thinkers, really appreciate the presence of every person here. I lament that I didn't get a chance to thank the people who came with the signs. Their input made this event better, and thank you. Thanks for your time.
Thanks.